Ken Dewonskin, is that correctly pronounced?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. And you're senior advisor for Deloitte in China. I've been living there for almost 50 years.
That's correct.
And we have Volvo Cars vice president for government affairs.
Correct.
Under Kärrberg.
Yes.
You were agreeing on most, I would say, on your view on China as a whole and sustainability specifically. Do you agree on that?
Yes,
statement?
yes.
Yeah. But one thing you were having a little bit different view, and that was electric cars. Would you like to begin? You were a little bit pessimistic, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes.
You were more pessimistic.
Yes.
Yes.
You were more optimistic, I would say. But Anders, you were a bit pessimistic. Would you say
Yes.
why was that?
Well, I've looked at the results, and if you see for the past since 2010, only 20,000 electric and plug-in hybrids have been sold in China, despite massive incentives, despite massive R&D support to the domestic industry, and despite support for infrastructure. So far, government policy on electrification of the cars have been a failure. However, for the future, we do believe that it will eventually come. And it's in the form of plug-in hybrids, which we feel is the option that customer will like better than a pure electric car.
Yeah.
Ken, you were saying that you thought that China would be the first major electric car market in the world.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that also in plug-in hybrids, or is it?
Well, it could be. I agree with that. I think plug-in hybrids are an important step, but I think China will eventually develop a substantial car park in pure electrics for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons that the development of the vehicle has been slower than expected is that for the first couple of years, China promoted a policy called indigenous innovation. And so the independent car makers in particular, the Chery's, Geely's, BYD's, all set about to try to develop the technology themselves. And we were making the point that Anders made, is that the technology for alternative energy vehicles is so complicated that not only can one company not develop it, but one country can't really develop it. It's a global effort that will involve, patent pools and portfolios and sharing. So the indigenous innovation campaign kind of came to an end in the middle of 2011, and that's when we saw Chinese domestic car companies really begin to cooperate more with the global companies that own this, the ones that we're familiar with, that have electric cars in the market already or hybrids in the market already. So I think that's one thing that's very important. The second is that Chinese driving habits. China has a very integrated approach to urban transportation. So they're investing massive amounts in subways and urban light rail. And you can't even keep up with the subway building in Beijing. It's astonishing, like the amount of subway capacity they open. One thing that means is that cars are used for actually less distance driving than we're familiar with. So what we call range anxiety, the problem with how far an electric car can go between charges is not a big deal in China, because 80% of the users of cars in and around Beijing and around Shanghai drive less than 80 kilometers a day. So you don't need a network of charging stations attached to shopping malls and things like that. They can charge at home. And I think that makes it easier, actually, even with existing technology, to begin to develop that marketplace. And then finally, the point I made up there is that the government has so much influence over buyer choice that you can do market surveys, you can do focus groups, and people will tell you, we want to hear an engine roar, we want to feel that power. But if that's the way they can get a license plate, if they can get 100,000 renminbi subsidy, it's going to move the market. And the government's going to do that because they've got to do something about oil.
So how does Volvo Cars adjust to this reality?
Well, we are right now developing plans for electrification in China, so we don't have any concrete to state at this point. However, we do
plans, I suppose.
Absolutely. We do recognize the power of incentives. That is clear. The license plate auction and the license plate lottery are extremely powerful. As we mentioned in the seminar, license plates are auctioned for 92,000 RMB, and after that you're going to buy a car. If you get that for free, of course, it's interesting. The lottery, we talked about it. I looked up the figures. There are 1.5 million people participating in the lottery in Beijing for 20,000 plates monthly, and it still doesn't catch up with demand. So it's an increasing stock of people waiting for this. Those type of incentives are of course extremely powerful. But I do want to underline, for us, we do believe much more in the plug-in concept than in the pure electric car for well, cost reasons, but also for other reasons when it comes to the practicality of such a car.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.